The morning sun cast long shadows across the grand courtyard of Windsor Castle as preparations for the annual royal garden party reached their final stages. Staff members hurried about with military precision, arranging chairs in perfectly straight rows, adjusting floral arrangements, and ensuring every detail met the exacting standards expected for such occasions. Among the sea of activity, one particular seating arrangement had become the subject of intense discussion behind closed doors. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, stood at her dressing room window, watching the preparations unfold below. Her morning had begun like any other royal engagement day, with careful attention to her appearance and a thorough briefing from her private secretary about the day's schedule. The garden party was meant to be a celebration of community service, bringing together hundreds of guests who had made significant contributions to their local communities. It should have been a joyous occasion, yet an undercurrent of tension had been building for weeks. The source of this tension lay in a seemingly minor detail that had major implications in the carefully orchestrated world of royal protocol. Every aspect of royal events was planned months in advance, from the guest list to the precise positioning of family members during ceremonies. These arrangements were not arbitrary. They reflected the complex hierarchy within the royal family and sent subtle but unmistakable messages to both participants and observers about status, favor, and future intentions. Catherine had been informed 3 weeks prior that her usual seat during the ceremonial portion of the garden party would be in the front row, third position from the right. This placement, while seemingly insignificant to outsiders, held deep meaning within royal circles. It positioned her prominently among senior working royals and acknowledged her growing role within the family structure. The seating chart had been approved by multiple departments and had even received the Queen's personal review, as was customary for all major events. However, just 48 hours before the garden party, Catherine's private secretary received an unexpected call from Clarence House, the official residence of King Charles III and Queen Camilla. The message was brief but startling. There would be a change to the seating arrangements. No detailed explanation was provided, only that Queen Camilla felt it would be more appropriate for the seating to reflect current priorities within the royal household. The implications of this change were immediately apparent to anyone familiar with royal protocol. Catherine's seat was being reassigned to someone else, effectively moving her to a less prominent position. While the palace would undoubtedly frame this as a minor adjustment, those who understood the intricate language of royal positioning knew better. This was a statement, deliberate and unmistakable. Catherine's immediate reaction was one of quiet bewilderment rather than anger. She had spent years learning to navigate the complex world of royal expectations, understanding that every gesture, every placement, every public appearance carried meaning far beyond its surface appearance. She had grown accustomed to the careful choreography required for public events and had always accepted her role within the established hierarchy without complaint. But this change felt different. It came without warning, without consultation, and without the usual diplomatic language that typically accompanied such adjustments. The abruptness of the decision suggested that it was not merely a logistical consideration, but something more personal, more pointed. As Catherine prepared for the day ahead, she found herself reflecting on the events of recent months. There had been subtle shifts in the dynamics within the royal family, small changes that individually might have gone unnoticed, but collectively painted a picture of evolving relationships and priorities. She had sensed a growing coolness in certain quarters, though she had hoped these were temporary adjustments as everyone settled into new roles following significant changes in the monarchy. The relationship between Catherine and Camilla had always been cordial, if not particularly warm. They moved in overlapping circles within the royal family, but had never developed the close bond that some might have expected. Their interactions were professional and respectful, marked by the careful politeness that characterized most relationships within the royal household. Catherine had always assumed this distance was simply a reflection of their different generations and backgrounds rather than any personal animosity. However, recent events had suggested that the relationship might be more complicated than Catherine had initially understood. There had been small incidents, barely noticeable to outsiders, but significant to those involved. A canceled joint engagement here, a revised schedule there, changes in protocol that seem to consistently work against Catherine's prominence or influence. The most recent example had occurred just 2 weeks earlier during a charity event supporting literacy programs. Catherine had been scheduled to make the keynote address, a recognition of her long-standing advocacy for early childhood education. The speech had been written, rehearsed, and approved through all necessary channels. But 3 days before the event, she was informed that Queen Camilla had decided to attend and would be delivering the main address instead. The explanation provided was that the Queen wished to show her personal support for the cause, but Catherine couldn't help but notice that this was the 3rd time in recent months that her public speaking opportunities had been redirected to Camilla. Each incident was explained as a positive development, evidence of senior royal family members taking increased interest in important causes. Yet the pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. Catherine had discussed these concerns with Prince William in private, careful to avoid appearing petty or competitive. William had listened with the patience and understanding that characterized their marriage, offering perspective when possible and support when explanation seemed inadequate. He, too, had noticed the subtle changes but had encouraged Catherine to focus on her work rather than palace politics. These things often resolve themselves, William had said during one of their evening walks around their private gardens. The most important thing is that you continue to do the work you believe in. The rest will sort itself out in time. Catherine had taken his advice to heart, throwing herself into her charitable work with even greater dedication. She had increased her public engagements, spent additional time developing new initiatives, and worked to strengthen relationships with the organizations and causes she supported. Her hope was that excellence in her royal duties would speak louder than any temporary protocol adjustments. But the seating change felt different from the previous incidents. It was more public, more visible, and more clearly a deliberate choice rather than a scheduling conflict or logistical necessity. The garden party would be attended by hundreds of guests and covered by multiple media outlets. Every photograph would be analyzed, every arrangement scrutinized for meaning. There would be no hiding the significance of Catherine's repositioning. As her lady-in-waiting helped with final preparations for the day, Catherine made a conscious decision about how she would handle the situation. She would attend the garden party with the grace and dignity that had become her trademark. She would engage warmly with guests, fulfill her duties with enthusiasm, and avoid any behavior that could be interpreted as resentful or uncooperative. This decision was not born from weakness or resignation, but from a deeper understanding of how the royal family functioned. Direct confrontation was rarely effective and often counterproductive. Instead, consistent excellence, unwavering commitment to duty, and patient persistence were the tools most likely to achieve long-term success. Catherine had learned these lessons through years of observation and experience, watching how the most successful members of the royal family navigated challenges and maintained their positions. The car arrived at precisely 10:30 to transport Catherine to Windsor Castle. As she settled into the familiar comfort of the royal vehicle, she reviewed her schedule for the day one final time. Despite the seating controversy, she had a full agenda of meetings with various charitable organizations, conversations with distinguished guests, and ceremonial duties that required her complete attention. The drive to Windsor provided a few moments of quiet reflection before the busy day ahead. Catherine watched the countryside pass by, noting how the late spring weather had brought everything into full bloom. The natural beauty of the landscape provided a calming contrast to the artificial tensions of palace life, reminding her of the larger purposes that drew her to royal service in the first place. Upon arrival at Windsor Castle, Catherine was struck by the magnificent preparations that had been completed. The gardens looked spectacular, with every flower bed perfectly maintained and every pathway meticulously cleaned. Tables laden with traditional afternoon tea refreshments were positioned throughout the grounds, and the main ceremonial area had been transformed into an impressive outdoor venue. Staff members greeted Catherine with their usual professionalism and warmth, providing final updates on the day's schedule and guest list. She noted that several of the organizations she particularly supported would be represented, including groups focused on early childhood development, mental health awareness, and community outreach programs. Whatever complications existed regarding seating arrangements, she was determined to make the most of opportunities to connect with people doing important work in these areas. As the arrival time for other family members approached, Catherine positioned herself in the designated gathering area where senior royals would meet before making their public appearance. This brief private time before public events was typically used for final coordination, sharing any last-minute updates, and ensuring everyone understood their roles for the day ahead. Prince William arrived first, offering Catherine an encouraging smile and a brief touch on her arm. He had been informed about the seating situation and had expressed his own concerns privately, but both had agreed that public solidarity was essential regardless of any behind-the-scenes disagreements. King Charles arrived next, appearing focused on the day's agenda and reviewing notes with his private secretary. He greeted Catherine warmly, asking about her recent engagements and expressing appreciation for her continued dedication to royal duties. Their conversation was brief but cordial, showing no signs of the tension that might have been expected given recent events. Queen Camilla was the last to arrive, making her entrance with the confident bearing that had become her trademark since assuming her new role. She was elegantly dressed in a pale blue ensemble that would photograph beautifully against the garden backdrop. Her greeting to Catherine was polite and appropriate, though observers might have noticed a slight coolness that had not been present in earlier interactions. As the family prepared to make their public entrance, Catherine took a moment to observe the dynamics around her. Years of experience had taught her to read the subtle signs that indicated how relationships were shifting within the royal household. Today, she sensed an undercurrent of anticipation that went beyond normal pre-event energy. Something significant was about to happen, though its exact nature remained unclear. The ceremonial portion of the garden party would begin in 15 minutes, and it was then that the carefully planned seating arrangement would become visible to hundreds of guests and media representatives. Catherine had prepared herself for this moment, but she couldn't entirely suppress a sense of apprehension about how the change would be received and what it might signal about future developments within the royal family. The next few hours would reveal not only the immediate implications of the seating change, but potentially set the tone for relationships and dynamics that could influence the monarchy for years to come. Catherine steeled herself for whatever lay ahead, drawing on the inner strength that had carried her through many challenging moments in her royal career. The moment arrived with all the pomp and ceremony that characterized major royal events. As the family members emerged from the castle's private entrance and began their processional walk toward the ceremonial area, hundreds of guests turned their attention toward the approaching group. Photographers positioned themselves strategically, their cameras ready to capture every moment of what appeared to be a routine royal engagement. Catherine walked with the measured pace that years of training had made second nature, her posture perfect and her expression composed. She had mastered the art of appearing completely at ease while remaining constantly aware of her surroundings and the expectations placed upon her. Today, however, required an additional layer of mental preparation as she approached the moment when the seating arrangements would become public. The ceremonial area featured a raised platform with several rows of chairs arranged in a precise formation that had been planned weeks in advance. The front row contained 5 seats, positioned to provide optimal viewing for both the seated individuals and the photographers who would document the event. Under normal circumstances, Catherine would have taken her place in the 3rd seat from the right, a position that acknowledged her senior status while maintaining the careful hierarchy that governs such occasions. But as the royal party approached the seating area, it became clear that significant changes had indeed been implemented. Queen Camilla moved confidently toward the front row, but instead of taking her expected position in the center seat reserved for the most senior royal present, she walked directly to the 3rd seat from the right, the seat that had been designated for Catherine just days earlier. The change was executed smoothly, without hesitation or acknowledgement that anything unusual was occurring. To casual observers, the seating arrangement might have appeared entirely normal. But for those familiar with royal protocol, the message was unmistakable. Queen Camilla had chosen to occupy the position previously assigned to Catherine, effectively demoting the Princess of Wales to a less prominent location. Catherine's response demonstrated the years of training and natural grace that had made her one of the most respected members of the royal family. Without showing any sign of surprise or displeasure, she moved seamlessly to the seat that was now available to her, 2 positions to the left and slightly behind Queen Camilla's new location. Her movement was fluid and natural, as if this had always been the intended arrangement. Prince William, walking beside his wife, showed remarkable composure despite what must have been his own surprise at the public nature of the seating change. He took his designated position without comment, though those who knew him well might have detected a slight tightening around his eyes that suggested controlled emotion beneath his diplomatic exterior. King Charles appeared focused on the ceremonial aspects of the event, greeting distinguished guests and preparing for his remarks to the assembled crowd. If he was aware of the significance of the seating adjustment, he gave no indication of concern or disapproval. This apparent acceptance of the new arrangement would later be interpreted by many as implicit approval of Queen Camilla's decision. The ceremony itself proceeded according to the published program, with speeches highlighting the charitable work of various organizations and recognition for individuals who had made exceptional contributions to their communities. Queen Camilla delivered remarks that were well received by the audience, speaking eloquently about the importance of community service and the role of charitable organizations in supporting those in need. Catherine, despite her repositioned seating, remained fully engaged throughout the proceedings. She applauded enthusiastically, maintained warm interactions with nearby guests, and showed no visible signs of the tension that the seating change might have created. Her professional behavior under challenging circumstances would later be noted by many observers as evidence of her continued commitment to royal duties regardless of personal considerations. However, the carefully trained eyes of royal correspondents and photographers were quick to notice the significance of what had occurred. Several veteran journalists who had covered the royal family for decades immediately recognized the protocol implications of the seating arrangement. Phone calls and text messages began circulating among media representatives as they processed the meaning of what they had witnessed. The first photographs appeared online within hours of the event's conclusion. Social media platforms were quickly filled with images showing Queen Camilla in Catherine's traditional position, with various commentators offering their interpretations of what this change might signify. The visual impact was exactly what protocol experts had predicted: clear, undeniable evidence of a shift in royal hierarchy that could not be explained away as coincidence or misunderstanding. Public reaction was swift and largely negative. Catherine had developed a substantial following among royal watchers and the general public, who appreciated her dedication to charitable causes, her apparent authenticity, and her graceful handling of the demands of royal life. Many viewed the seating change as an unnecessary slight against someone who had proven her value to the monarchy through years of dedicated service. Social media commentary ranged from expressions of support for Catherine to sharp criticism of Queen Camilla's decision. Hashtags supporting the Princess of Wales began trending within hours, with thousands of users sharing their opinions about what they saw as unfair treatment. The intensity of public reaction suggested that this incident had touched on deeper feelings about fairness, respect, and the proper recognition of merit within the royal family. Royal commentators and experts in constitutional monarchy found themselves fielding numerous interview requests as news outlets sought to understand the implications of the seating change. Most emphasized that while such adjustments were technically within Queen Camilla's prerogative as the senior female royal, the public nature and timing of the change raised questions about judgment and sensitivity to public opinion. Dr. Margaret Thornton, a respected expert on royal protocol who had written extensively about monarchy in the modern era, offered a measured assessment when contacted by several news organizations. She explained that seating arrangements at royal events were indeed significant and carefully considered, making any changes worthy of attention and analysis. However, she also cautioned against reading too much into a single incident, suggesting that the broader pattern of relationships and decisions would be more telling than any individual event. Behind the scenes at the various royal residences, the immediate aftermath of the garden party was marked by careful silence. No official statements were issued regarding the seating arrangement, following the royal family's general policy of not commenting on what were characterized as minor logistical details. Staff members who might normally gossip about such developments found themselves under explicit instructions to avoid discussing the matter with anyone outside their immediate departments. Catherine returned to her private quarters at the conclusion of the garden party with the same composure she had maintained throughout the public portion of the event. However, those closest to her could sense the emotional toll of the day's events. The public nature of the slight had made it impossible to dismiss as a simple misunderstanding or administrative error. This had been a deliberate choice, executed in full view of hundreds of witnesses and multiple cameras. Prince William's reaction was more visibly affected, though he too maintained the diplomatic restraint expected of senior royals. In private conversations with his closest advisors, he expressed frustration not only with the seating change itself, but with the way it had been implemented. The lack of consultation or advance notice had made it impossible for Catherine to prepare mentally for the adjustment or for the family to present a united front in response to questions. The evening news programs led with coverage of the garden party, focusing specifically on the seating arrangement and its possible implications. Royal correspondents who had attended the event provided detailed analysis of what they had observed, with many noting the contrast between the dignified way Catherine had handled the situation and the questionable judgment shown in creating the situation in the first place. International media outlets also picked up the story, recognizing that developments within the British royal family often reflected broader themes about power, respect, and institutional dynamics that resonated beyond national borders. The seating controversy was framed within the context of ongoing discussions about the monarchy's role in contemporary society and the importance of fairness and merit in determining recognition and status. Within Clarence House, Queen Camilla's official residence, staff members worked to manage the growing media attention while avoiding any statements that might escalate the controversy. The Queen's private secretary fielded numerous calls from journalists seeking comment or clarification, but maintained the standard position that seating arrangements were internal matters not subject to public discussion. However, sources close to Queen Camilla began providing background information to selected journalists, suggesting that the seating change had been motivated by a desire to reflect current roles and responsibilities within the royal household. These unofficial explanations emphasized Queen Camilla's position as the king's wife and her growing portfolio of charitable and ceremonial duties. These explanations did little to satisfy critics who argued that Catherine's contributions to the royal family warranted continued recognition regardless of changing circumstances. Many pointed to her successful public engagements, her positive approval ratings among the British public, and her effective advocacy for causes ranging from early childhood development to mental health awareness. The controversy also highlighted broader questions about the direction of the monarchy under King Charles III and the role that Queen Camilla would play in shaping its priorities and public image. Some observers interpreted the seating change as evidence of a more assertive approach by the new queen, while others saw it as an unfortunate misstep that could damage relationships within the royal family and public confidence in royal judgment. As the day concluded and initial media coverage began to evolve into longer-term analysis, it became clear that the garden party seating incident would not quickly fade from public attention. The visual nature of the slight, combined with Catherine's popularity and the public's general interest in royal family dynamics, had created a story with significant staying power. The implications extended beyond immediate public relations concerns to questions about how the royal family would navigate similar situations in the future. The precedent set by the seating change could influence everything from future event planning to the broader balance of power and recognition within the royal household. Catherine's handling of the situation had been exemplary, demonstrating the grace under pressure that had made her a respected figure within royal circles. However, the incident had also revealed potential fault lines within the family that could create ongoing challenges if not addressed thoughtfully and sensitively. The evening's private family dinners at various royal residences were undoubtedly affected by the day's events, though no details of these conversations would ever become public. The careful diplomatic language that characterized official royal communications would be tested in the coming days as pressure mounted for some form of response or clarification regarding the seating controversy and its implications for future royal events. The morning after the garden party dawned with an unprecedented level of media scrutiny focused on what many were now calling Seatgate. Newspaper front pages across Britain and international publications featured prominent coverage of the seating controversy, with photographs clearly showing Queen Camilla in Catherine's traditional position and detailed analysis of what this change might signify for the future of royal family dynamics. The palace's official response, or lack thereof, became a story in itself as journalists pressed for any comment on the seating arrangements. The standard policy of not discussing internal protocol matters suddenly seemed inadequate when faced with such intense public interest and concern. Royal communications staff found themselves in the difficult position of maintaining official silence while trying to prevent the story from escalating further. Catherine began her day, as she always did, with a private breakfast and review of her daily schedule with her personal staff. However, the usual routine was complicated by the dozens of interview requests, comment solicitations, and analysis pieces that required some form of response. Her private secretary worked diligently to field these inquiries while protecting Catherine from the most intrusive demands for her personal reaction to the previous day's events. The Princess of Wales had 3 scheduled engagements for the day: a visit to a children's hospital in London, a meeting with trustees of her Early Childhood Foundation, and an evening reception for military families. Each event would now carry additional significance as observers watched for any signs of how the seating controversy might be affecting her public duties or personal demeanor. Prince William's schedule was equally full, with a series of meetings related to his environmental advocacy work and a public appearance at the opening of a new conservation center. Like Catherine, he would face heightened scrutiny as media representatives looked for any indication of his response to his wife's treatment at the garden party. The couple had agreed that their best strategy was to proceed with their planned activities while maintaining their characteristic dignity and focus on their charitable work. Meanwhile, at Clarence House, Queen Camilla faced her own challenges as the controversy continued to dominate news coverage. Her staff worked to manage a schedule that suddenly seemed fraught with potential complications, as every public appearance would now be analyzed for signs of defiance, regret, or response to the criticism she was receiving. The Queen's first engagement was a visit to a literacy charity that she had supported for several years. What should have been a routine appearance highlighting important educational work instead became a media circus as dozens of reporters and photographers gathered, hoping to capture some indication of her mood or reaction to the growing controversy. Queen Camilla handled the situation with a practiced composure that had served her well during decades of public scrutiny. She engaged warmly with charity representatives and beneficiaries, delivered prepared remarks about the importance of reading programs, and avoided any reference to the previous day's events. However, her typically confident demeanor seemed slightly strained, suggesting that the intensity of negative reaction had perhaps exceeded her expectations. The British public's response continued to evolve throughout the day, with opinion polls showing strong support for Catherine and concern about what many viewed as unfair treatment. Social media platforms remained active with discussions about royal protocol, fairness, and the proper balance of respect within the royal family. Several prominent public figures, including former prime ministers and respected cultural leaders, made carefully worded statements expressing support for Catherine while avoiding direct criticism of Queen Camilla. Royal biographers and historians found themselves in high demand as news programs sought expert analysis of the situation. Most emphasized that while protocol disputes were not unprecedented within royal history, the public nature of this particular incident and the strong public reaction marked it as particularly significant. Several noted that modern monarchies depended heavily on public support and approval, making sensitivity to public opinion more important than in previous eras. Dr. Elizabeth Harrington, author of several acclaimed books about the modern monarchy, provided context during a television interview that many found particularly insightful. She explained that successful royal families throughout history had generally been those that managed internal relationships with discretion and mutual respect, avoiding public displays of hierarchy that might appear petty or vindictive. The strength of the monarchy has always depended on public perception of fairness and dignity, Dr. Harrington observed. When internal disputes become public spectacles, it can damage the institution's reputation even when the individuals involved are acting within their technical rights. Catherine's visit to the children's hospital proceeded smoothly, with her characteristic warmth and genuine engagement with young patients and their families. If she was affected by the ongoing media attention, she gave no indication during her interactions with hospital staff and families. Her ability to remain focused on her charitable work despite personal challenges earned additional praise from observers and reinforced public support for her position within the royal family. However, the heightened media presence at the hospital created some complications as photographers and journalists attempted to capture any moment that might provide insight into Catherine's state of mind. Hospital security worked closely with royal protection officers to maintain appropriate boundaries while allowing the charitable visit to proceed as planned. One particularly poignant moment occurred when Catherine spent extended time with a young girl who had been receiving treatment for a serious illness. Their conversation, while private, was observed by many who noted the genuine connection and care that Catherine demonstrated. The image of her kneeling beside the child's bed to engage at eye level became one of the most widely shared photographs from the day, serving as a powerful reminder of the important work that had brought Catherine into royal life in the first place. The foundation meeting that followed provided Catherine with an opportunity to engage with serious policy discussions about early childhood development, one of her most passionate areas of focus. The trustees, who included several distinguished academics and child welfare experts, have been following the media coverage with concern but were impressed by Catherine's continued dedication to substantive work despite the distractions. During the meeting, Catherine presented research findings from recent pilot programs and discussed strategies for expanding successful initiatives to reach more families across the country. Her detailed knowledge and thoughtful analysis demonstrated the depth of her commitment to this work and reminded everyone present of the valuable contributions she made beyond her ceremonial duties. As news of Catherine's successful engagements spread throughout the day, public opinion continued to consolidate in her favor. The contrast between her grace under pressure and what many viewed as unnecessary provocation at the garden party became increasingly stark. Editorial writers and columnists began calling for some form of acknowledgement or correction of what they characterized as a misjudgment in protocol. The international media attention also intensified, with major news outlets in the United States, Canada, Australia, and other Commonwealth countries providing extensive coverage of the controversy. Many framed the story within broader discussions about institutional fairness and the importance of merit-based recognition, themes that resonated well beyond royal circles. Social media analysis revealed that hashtags supporting Catherine were trending not only in the United Kingdom, but in multiple countries around the world. The global nature of the response demonstrated the extent to which the British royal family remained a subject of international interest, and the degree to which Catherine had developed genuine personal support across different cultures and contexts. Evening television programs provided comprehensive analysis of the day's developments, with most concluding that the controversy had damaged Queen Camilla's public standing while reinforcing Catherine's reputation as a dedicated and gracious member of the royal family. The visual contrast between Catherine's charitable work and the perceived pettiness of the seating change created a narrative that strongly favored the Princess of Wales. Prince William's Conservation Center opening also proceeded successfully, though he faced numerous questions from reporters about his reaction to his wife's treatment. His responses were diplomatically careful, but showed clear support for Catherine's contributions to the royal family. When directly asked about the seating controversy, he simply stated that Catherine's dedication to her duties spoke for itself and that he was proud of her continued commitment to the causes she championed. Behind the scenes, palace staff worked frantically to assess the long-term implications of the controversy and develop strategies for managing the ongoing damage. Senior advisors from various royal households found themselves in unprecedented coordination meetings as they tried to develop a unified approach to what had become a genuine crisis of public confidence. The traditional reluctance to acknowledge or discuss internal royal family matters was being severely tested by the intensity of public interest and the clearly negative direction of media coverage. Several senior staff members privately expressed concern that the situation required some form of response or clarification, but the established protocols provided little guidance for handling such circumstances. Queen Camilla's evening reception, originally planned as a celebration of community volunteers, became another challenging public appearance as she faced continued media scrutiny. While she maintained her composure and fulfilled her duties appropriately, the underlying tension was evident to experienced observers. The usual ease and confidence of her public interactions seemed forced, suggesting that the sustained criticism was taking a personal toll. As the day concluded, it became clear that the seating controversy had evolved far beyond a simple protocol dispute into a significant test of royal family relationships and public confidence. The strong support for Catherine, combined with criticism of Queen Camilla's judgment, had created a dynamic that would be difficult to resolve through traditional royal family approaches to managing internal disagreements. The precedent set by this incident would likely influence royal protocol decisions for years to come, as family members and staff would be more aware of the potential public implications of what might previously have been considered minor internal adjustments. The modern monarchy's dependence on public approval had been dramatically illustrated by the swift and strong reaction to what Queen Camilla might have intended as a subtle assertion of her position. The evening's private family communications, while never made public, undoubtedly included difficult conversations about how to move forward while preserving both family relationships and institutional credibility. The challenge would be finding a way to address legitimate public concerns while avoiding the appearance of backing down under pressure or admitting error in royal judgment. 3 weeks after the garden party incident, the reverberations continued to shape royal family dynamics and public perception in ways that none of the principal figures had anticipated. What began as a seating arrangement change had evolved into a broader examination of leadership, judgment, and the delicate balance between tradition and personal relationships within the modern monarchy. The immediate crisis management efforts had focused on containing the damage and preventing further escalation, but it became increasingly clear that more substantive action would be required to restore public confidence and family harmony. The traditional royal approach of maintaining silence and waiting for public attention to move elsewhere had proven inadequate when faced with such sustained criticism and genuine public concern. King Charles found himself in the difficult position of managing conflicting loyalties and competing interests. As monarch, he needed to support his wife's position and authority within the royal household. As father and father-in-law, he recognized the unfairness of Catherine's treatment and the potential long-term damage to family relationships. As head of an institution dependent on public support, he could not ignore the clear message of disapproval from the British people. The solution, when it finally emerged, required careful orchestration and delicate diplomacy. Rather than issuing direct apologies or admissions of error, which would have been unprecedented and potentially damaging to royal authority, the palace opted for a more subtle approach that would address public concerns while allowing all parties to maintain their dignity. The opportunity came with the announcement of a major new charitable initiative focused on supporting military families, an area where both Catherine and Queen Camilla had demonstrated genuine commitment over many years. The joint announcement would provide a natural context for public appearances together and an opportunity to demonstrate family unity while highlighting the positive contributions of both women. The planning for this initiative required extensive coordination between the various royal households, providing a practical reason for Catherine and Queen Camilla to work together closely. These behind-the-scenes collaborations, while necessarily private, began the process of rebuilding their working relationship on a foundation of shared purpose rather than personal grievance. Catherine approached these joint planning sessions with the same professionalism and grace that had characterized her response to the original controversy. She focused on the substantive work of developing effective programs for military families while avoiding any behavior that might be interpreted as holding grudges or seeking revenge for her earlier treatment. Queen Camilla, for her part, seemed to recognize that her position required a more collaborative approach than she had initially adopted. While she maintained her dignity and authority, she appeared more willing to acknowledge Catherine's expertise and contributions, particularly in areas where the Princess of Wales had developed recognized competence over years of dedicated work. The first public appearance featuring both women together since the garden party took place at a military base in Scotland, where they jointly visited families affected by recent deployments. The careful choreography of their interactions demonstrated renewed respect and cooperation, with both women showing genuine warmth toward each other and shared enthusiasm for supporting military families. Media coverage of this joint visit was notably positive, with observers commenting on the apparent resolution of earlier tensions and the effective partnership demonstrated by both women. The visual contrast with the garden party incident was stark and clearly intentional, showing Catherine and Queen Camilla working together as equals in pursuit of shared charitable goals. However, the deeper implications of the seating controversy continued to influence royal family dynamics in more subtle ways. The incident had highlighted the importance of consultation and sensitivity in protocol decisions, leading to new procedures for reviewing significant changes in royal arrangements. These procedural modifications were implemented quietly, but represented meaningful acknowledgement that previous approaches had proven inadequate. Prince William's role throughout the extended aftermath of the controversy had been carefully managed, but clearly supportive of his wife, while maintaining appropriate respect for his stepmother. His balanced approach helped prevent the incident from escalating into a broader family conflict, while ensuring that Catherine felt supported during a challenging period. The public's response to the apparent reconciliation was generally positive, though many observers remained skeptical about whether the underlying issues had been genuinely resolved or simply papered over for public consumption. The strength of initial reaction to Catherine's treatment had demonstrated the depth of public support for her, creating ongoing pressure for continued fair treatment in future circumstances. Royal biographers and constitutional experts used the incident as a case study in how modern monarchies must balance traditional hierarchy with contemporary expectations about fairness and merit-based recognition. The episode became frequently cited in academic discussions about the evolution of royal institutions and their adaptation to changing social norms. Dr. Margaret Thornton, the protocol expert who had provided early commentary on the controversy, published a detailed analysis several months later that examined the incident within the broader context of royal family modernization efforts. Her conclusion was that while the immediate crisis had been successfully managed, the underlying tensions between traditional royal hierarchy and public expectations for fairness would continue to challenge the institution. The garden party incident revealed that public tolerance for what might be perceived as petty internal politics within the royal family has significantly diminished. Dr. Thornton wrote, "Modern monarchies must recognize that their legitimacy depends increasingly on demonstrating fairness, merit recognition, and collaborative leadership rather than asserting traditional prerogatives." The long-term impact on relationships between Catherine and Queen Camilla appear to be mixed. Their public interactions remain professional and appropriate, but sources close to both women suggested that full trust and warmth would require more time to develop. The incident had revealed underlying tensions that would need continued attention and care to prevent future conflicts. Catherine's popularity with the British public, already substantial before the garden party incident, reached new heights following her graceful handling of the controversy. Opinion polls consistently showed her as one of the most respected members of the royal family, with particular appreciation for her dignity under pressure and continued dedication to charitable work despite personal challenges. This increased popularity translated into enhanced effectiveness for Catherine's charitable initiatives as organizations and potential supporters recognized the value of association with someone who commanded such strong public respect. Her foundation work, particularly in early childhood development, received increased funding and attention as a direct result of the heightened public profile generated by the seeding controversy. Queen Camilla's public standing, while damaged by the incident, gradually recovered through her continued charitable work and the demonstration of improved collaboration with Catherine. The Joint Military Family Initiative proved particularly effective in rehabilitating her image, showing her genuine commitment to important causes beyond any personal considerations. The incident also influenced broader royal family protocols and decision-making processes. New consultation procedures were established to ensure that significant changes in arrangements or protocols would be reviewed for potential public relations implications before implementation. While these changes were never publicly announced, they represented meaningful acknowledgement of lessons learned from the garden party controversy. Staff members within the various royal households developed enhanced coordination mechanisms to prevent similar incidents in the future. Regular communication between private secretaries and protocol officers became more systematic, with particular attention to identifying potential sources of confusion or conflict before they could create public problems. The media's role in amplifying and sustaining the controversy became a subject of academic study as communications experts examined how traditional royal coverage had evolved in the social media age. The speed and intensity of public reaction demonstrated how quickly royal family incidents could escalate beyond traditional palace communication strategies. As the first anniversary of the garden party incident approached, retrospective analyses generally concluded that the controversy had served as an important learning experience for the royal family. The immediate damage had been significant but manageable, while the longer-term changes in procedures and relationships had arguably strengthened the institution's ability to handle similar challenges in the future. Catherine's approach to the incident became a model for how members of the royal family might handle similar situations, demonstrating that grace, dignity, and continued focus on substantive work could be more effective than confrontation or complaint. Her response had enhanced her reputation while contributing to positive changes in family dynamics. The incident also highlighted the important role of public opinion in shaping royal family behavior, even in matters that might previously have been considered purely internal affairs. The strength of public reaction to Catherine's treatment served as a clear signal that modern monarchies must consider public perception as a significant factor in all their decisions and arrangements. Looking forward, the garden party seating controversy would likely be remembered as a turning point in the evolution of the contemporary British monarchy, marking the moment when traditional approaches to managing internal hierarchy proved inadequate to address modern public expectations for fairness and transparency. The successful resolution of the crisis demonstrated the institution's capacity for adaptation and learning, qualities essential for its continued relevance and effectiveness. The relationships between the principal figures continued to evolve in the months and years following the incident, with both challenges and improvements reflecting the complex nature of family dynamics under intense public scrutiny. The garden party incident had tested these relationships significantly, but had ultimately contributed to their maturation and development in ways that strengthened both family bonds and institutional effectiveness. The legacy of Queen Camilla's silent gesture at the garden party would be measured not just by the immediate controversy it created, but by the positive changes in communication, consultation, and collaboration that emerged from the crisis. In this sense, what began as a potentially damaging incident had evolved into a catalyst for meaningful improvement in how the royal family operated both internally and in its relationship with the British public.